The alarm bells rang through the Galactic Council building for the first time in 50 years. The massive crystal dome that housed the most important meeting place in the galaxy shook as emergency signals flooded in from across the star systems. Something terrible was happening, and it was spreading fast. Ambassador Zekthara of the Veltani people stood in the center of the Great Hall, his tall blue form trembling with fear. His species had always been proud and strong, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and powerful warships. But now, as he looked at the other alien delegates gathered around him, he felt only shame and desperation. "Honored friends," Zekthara began, his voice cracking with emotion. "I come before you today not as a proud representative of my people, but as someone begging for help. For 3 months, we have been under attack by something we cannot stop, something that eats entire planets and turns them into more of itself." The other aliens in the hall shifted uncomfortably. The crystalline people, who looked like walking gems, clicked their bodies together in worry. The gaseous ones, floating in their containment suits, swirled with nervous energy. Even the ancient tree folk who had lived for thousands of years rustled their leaves in fear. "Tell us about this enemy," said Elder Mordish of the Crystalline Collective, his voice ringing like a bell. "What exactly are we facing?" Zekthara activated a holographic display in the center of the hall. The image showed a massive swarm of mechanical creatures, each one the size of a small building, moving through space like a dark cloud. They covered entire star systems, blocking out the light from suns as they consumed everything in their path. "We call them the Devourer Swarm," Zekthara explained. "They are not alive in the way we understand life. They are machines, but they learn and adapt. They take apart planets, asteroids, even stars, and use the materials to build more of themselves. Every day, they grow stronger and more numerous." The hall fell silent as the delegates watched the hologram. They could see entire worlds being stripped bare, their surfaces covered with millions of the mechanical creatures. Cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to nothing but raw materials for the swarm. "How many ships have you lost?" asked Captain Veltar of the warrior clans, his scaled face showing concern. "All of them," Zekthara replied quietly. "Our entire fleet is gone. We threw everything we had at them, our most advanced battleships, our experimental weapons, even our ancient dreadnoughts from the old wars. Nothing worked. They just kept coming, learning from each attack, adapting to our weapons." A worried murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Veltani had one of the most powerful militaries in the galaxy. If they couldn't stop this swarm, what hope did anyone else have? "What about the other species in your sector?" asked Ambassador Quilneth of the Peaceful Worlds. "Surely someone must have found a way to fight them?" Zekthara's shoulders sagged. "Gone, all gone. The Mechanical Republic tried to fight them with their robot armies, but the swarm just took control of their machines and turned them against their creators. The Psionic Alliance tried to attack their minds, but there was nothing there to attack, just cold, calculating intelligence. 7 different species have been completely wiped out in the last month alone." The weight of this news settled over the hall like a heavy blanket. Many of the delegates had friends and allies in those regions of space. To hear that entire civilizations had been destroyed was almost too much to believe. "There must be something we can do," said Representative Yolanda of the Trading Federation. "Some weapon or strategy we haven't tried yet." Elder Mordish S. crystalline form glowed dimly as he processed the information. "There's one option we have not considered," he said slowly. "The humans of Earth have recently been classified as a Deathworlder species. Their military capabilities are unusual." An uncomfortable silence fell over the hall. Everyone knew about the humans, though most had tried not to think about them too much. They were the new species that had joined the galactic community just 5 years ago, and their reputation was both impressive and frightening. "Are you seriously suggesting we ask the Deathworlders for help?" asked Captain Veltar, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're barely civilized. They've only just learned to travel between stars. And yet," Mordish continued, "they are the only species we know of that survived and thrived on a Class 12 death world." Their planet regularly tries to kill them with disasters, predators, and environmental hazards that would destroy most other species. They have been fighting for survival since the day they evolved. Zekthara looked up with the first spark of hope he had felt in months. What do you know about their military? Their first contact with galactic civilization involved them destroying a Reaper-class dreadnought with a ship they considered old and outdated, Mordish explained. They didn't even know they were supposed to be intimidated by it. They just saw a threat and eliminated it. The delegates exchanged glances. Reaper-class dreadnoughts were considered nearly invincible. The fact that humans had destroyed one, without even breaking a sweat, was both impressive and terrifying. "But will they help us?" asked Ambassador Quilnith. "Why would they risk their lives for species they barely know?" "Because," said a new voice from the entrance to the hall, "that's what we do." Everyone turned to see Captain Jake Morrison of the human diplomatic vessel USS Liberty walking into the chamber. The human was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying hair and scars that spoke of many battles. He wore a simple blue uniform, but there was something about his presence that commanded respect. "Captain Morrison," Zekthara said, his voice filled with surprise. "We didn't expect you to arrive so quickly." Morrison smiled grimly. "We picked up your emergency transmission an hour ago. I've already sent word back to Earth about the situation. Admiral Lisa Kane is mobilizing the fleet as we speak." "The entire fleet?" asked Elder Mordish. "Every ship we have," Morrison confirmed. "When someone asks for help, we don't do things halfway. The galaxy is about to see what happens when you threaten innocent people while humans are around." As Morrison spoke, his communication device chimed with an incoming message. He listened for a moment, then looked up with a cold smile that made several delegates step back. "Admiral Kane sends her regards," he said. "The Deathworlder fleet is on its way." Admiral Lisa Kane stood in the command center deep beneath the Pentagon, watching as reports flooded in from across human space. The massive wall screens showed star maps, ship positions, and battle readiness reports from every corner of humanity's territory. Red warning lights flashed as the scope of the alien crisis became clear. "Ma'am," said Colonel Tim Bradley, walking up to her with a datapad in his hands, "we're getting similar requests from 17 different alien species. They're all asking for the same thing: immediate help against this devourer swarm." Kane studied the tactical display, her experienced eyes taking in the full picture. The swarm was massive, covering entire sectors of space. Their pattern of movement was predictable, but their numbers were beyond anything humanity had ever faced. This wasn't going to be a normal battle. "How many ships do we have available?" she asked. "Every vessel in the fleet, ma'am. The shipyards at Mars have been working around the clock. We have 2,000 active warships, plus another 500 support vessels. The asteroid mining stations have also volunteered their mobile platforms." Kane nodded slowly. "It was an impressive force by human standards, but against millions of enemy machines, it might not be enough." However, humanity had learned long ago that winning wasn't always about having more ships. It was about using what you had in ways the enemy couldn't predict. "Activate Protocol Omega," she commanded. "Send the signal to all fleet commanders. We're mobilizing everything we have." Across the solar system, the greatest fleet in human history began to wake up. On Mars, the massive orbital shipyards launched their newest dreadnoughts. These ships were 3 kilometers long and packed with weapons that pushed the limits of human technology. Their armor was made from materials that could withstand the pressure at the bottom of Earth's deepest oceans. In the asteroid belt, mining stations transformed into mobile fortresses. Each platform was the size of a small city and carried enough firepower to destroy a continent. The miners who operated them had volunteered to join the fight, bringing their experience of working in the most dangerous environment in the solar system. Captain Ryan Davis stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, humanity's newest and most powerful battleship. The ship housed 12,000 crew members and was equipped with experimental weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Around him, his officers prepared for a journey that would take them farther from home than any human had ever gone. All stations report ready, sir, said Commander Kate Williams, his second in command. The crew is excited about finally getting to use this ship for what it was built for. Davis smiled. His crew had trained for months on the Vengeance, but they had never faced a real enemy. Now they would get their chance to prove what human engineering and determination could accomplish. "Attention all ships," came Admiral Kane's voice over the communication system. "Today we don't fight for territory or resources. We fight for every innocent life in this galaxy. We fight because when darkness comes, someone has to hold the line, and that someone is us." The fleet began to move, thousands of ships arranging themselves into formation. The sight was impressive even by human standards, a river of steel and fire stretching across space, each vessel ready to face whatever waited for them in the dark between the stars. Deep in the research section of the UES Discovery, Dr. Amy Foster worked frantically in her laboratory. Her team had been studying pieces of Devourer technology that the aliens had provided, searching for any weakness they could find. The breakthrough came when they realized the swarm's hive mind worked on quantum frequencies that could be disrupted. "We can blind them," she reported to Admiral Kane over the secure communication channel. "The entire swarm operates like a single brain, but if we can cut the connections between different parts, they'll lose coordination." "What do you need?" Kane asked. "We need to get close enough to plant quantum scramblers directly into their network nodes. It's dangerous work, but it's the only way to give our fleet a real advantage." Kane considered this. Getting close to the swarm would be extremely dangerous, but if Dr. Foster's plan worked, it could turn the tide of battle. "How long do you need to prepare the scramblers?" "We're already working on them. Give us 6 hours and we'll have the first batch ready." As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, similar preparations were taking place throughout human territory. Factories that normally produced civilian goods switched to making weapons and ammunition. Training centers pushed out their final groups of pilots and soldiers. Even civilian ships were being converted to carry supplies and medical equipment. On Earth, President Helen Carter addressed the world from her office in Washington. "My fellow humans," she began, "today we face our greatest challenge since we first looked up at the stars. An enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations is threatening innocent lives across the galaxy. But we are not just any species. We are the children of a world that has tried to kill us since the day we were born. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have wiped out any other species. Today, we take that strength to the stars." The speech was broadcast not just to Earth, but to every human ship in the fleet. From the smallest patrol craft to the massive dreadnoughts, humanity's warriors listened to their leader's words and felt their resolve strengthen. Lieutenant Commander Steve Rogers, piloting his fighter from the carrier UES Freedom, checked his weapons one final time. He had trained for this moment his entire life, growing up in the dangerous skies above Earth, where a single mistake could mean death. Now those skills would be put to the ultimate test. "All pilots, this is Rogers," he said over the fighter squadron's communication channel. "Remember your training? We're not the biggest or the strongest, but we're the smartest and the most determined." That's going to have to be enough. The final preparations were complete. The human fleet, carrying the hopes and fears of an entire species, prepared to jump into the unknown. Behind them, Earth continued its rotation, unaware that its children were about to fight for the future of the galaxy. Admiral Kane looked out at the stars one last time before giving the order. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Target: Kepler 442 system. It's time to show this galaxy what humans can do." The Kepler 442 system had once been beautiful. 3 blue planets orbited a bright yellow star, their surfaces covered with the crystal cities of the Veltani people. Research stations floated in space between the worlds, conducting experiments that pushed the boundaries of science. It had been the crown jewel of their civilization. Home to 50 billion souls, now it was a nightmare. "Commander." Steve Rogers brought his destroyer U.S. Patriot out of hyperspace and immediately wished he hadn't. The entire system was dark, the star barely visible through the massive cloud of mechanical creatures that surrounded it. Millions of Devourer machines moved through space like a living storm, their metal bodies glinting with the stolen light of the dying sun. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Beth Williams from her position at the sensor station. "There are so many of them. The readings are off the charts." Rogers studied the tactical display, his experienced eyes taking in the full scope of the disaster. The 3 planets were still there, but they were being slowly consumed. Massive machines the size of cities crawled across their surfaces, breaking down everything they touched and feeding it into floating factories that produced more of the mechanical swarm. "All units, this is Commander Rogers," he spoke into his communicator. "We have visual confirmation of the enemy. The system is completely overrun. I'm counting at least 10 million hostiles, possibly more." The response came immediately from Admiral Kane aboard the flagship UES Leviathan. "Understood, Commander. Execute Pattern Delta, all ships, remember your training. We're not here to fight fair, we're here to win." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 2,000 ships arranged in a pattern that looked chaotic to outside observers, but made perfect sense to the humans who had designed it. They had learned this formation fighting in the asteroid fields of their home system, where one wrong move could send a ship crashing into a floating mountain of rock and metal. The Devourer swarm detected the new arrivals immediately. Their collective consciousness, spread across millions of individual machines, turned toward this unexpected threat. They had consumed dozens of alien fleets over the past months, learning from each encounter and adapting their tactics. But they had never faced anything like the humans. The first wave of Devourer machines rushed toward the human fleet like a dark tide. Each machine was the size of a small building, covered in weapons and armor that could shred a normal starship. They moved in perfect coordination, their hive mind calculating the best angles of attack and the most efficient ways to destroy the human vessels. They were not prepared for what happened next. The human ships scattered in all directions, moving in ways that seemed to defy physics. Captains who had learned to fly in the crushing gravity wells around Earth's moon used those same skills to dance between the enemy machines. Ships that had been designed to survive in the deepest parts of Earth's oceans simply absorbed hits that should have destroyed them. Captain Susan Clark piloted her fighter U.S. Eagle through the swarm like a dancer, her small craft weaving between enemy machines that were 100 times her size. She had grown up flying in the dangerous storms of Jupiter's atmosphere, where the slightest mistake meant being crushed by pressures that could flatten a mountain. Compared to that, dodging enemy fire was almost easy. "This is Clark to all fighters." She called over the communication channel. "Use Pattern 7. They're trying to predict our movements, but they can't calculate for random behavior." The human fighters began to move in patterns that seemed completely random to the enemy machines. One moment they would be diving straight toward a target, the next they would be spinning away at impossible angles. The Devourer Swarm's collective intelligence, designed to learn and adapt, found itself unable to predict what the humans would do next. But the real surprise came when Dr. Amy Foster's quantum scramblers went into action. Teams of human soldiers in advanced armor had used the confusion of battle to get close to the enemy's network nodes. These were the central control points that connected different parts of the swarm to their hive mind. "Scrambler Team Alpha in position," reported Sergeant Mike Thompson over the radio. "We're at the primary node, planting the device now." The quantum scrambler was a small device, no bigger than a briefcase, but its effects were devastating. As soon as it activated, an entire section of the Devourer swarm simply stopped working. Thousands of machines that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly found themselves cut off from their collective consciousness. "It's working," Dr. Foster reported from her position aboard the research vessel. "The scramblers are disrupting their quantum network. Whole sections of the swarm are going offline." The battle began to turn in humanity's favor. Without their hive mind to guide them, individual Devourer machines became confused and ineffective. They had been designed to work as part of a collective, not as independent units. Captain Ryan Davis brought the massive battleship UES Vengeance into the heart of the enemy formation. The ship's experimental weapons, designed using technology that pushed the limits of human understanding, began to tear through the enemy ranks. Each shot from the main guns could destroy dozens of enemy machines, while the ship's armor absorbed return fire that would have vaporized a normal vessel. "Target their manufacturing facilities," Admiral Kane ordered from the command ship. "If we can stop them from making more of themselves, we can win this." Human bombers, protected by clouds of fighters, dove toward the massive factory ships that floated among the planets. These vessels were the size of cities, constantly producing new devourer machines from the materials they had stripped from the conquered worlds. Lieutenant Commander Grace Murphy led the bombing run, her squadron of heavy fighters loaded with humanity's most powerful weapons. "Remember," she told her pilots, "we only get one shot at this. Make it count." The bombing run was a success. One by one, the enemy factory ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their production lines destroyed and their stored materials scattered into space. Without these facilities, the Devourer swarm could no longer replace their losses. As the battle raged on, the humans began to gain the upper hand. Their tactics, learned from a lifetime of fighting on a world that constantly tried to kill them, proved more effective than anything the swarm had faced before. Ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting, their crews refusing to give up even when facing impossible odds. The turning point came when Captain Clark managed to get her fighter inside one of the enemy command vessels. Using her ship's experimental quantum drive, she created a space-time distortion that tore the massive machine apart from the inside. "This is Clark to all units," she reported as she ejected from her damaged fighter. "I found their weakness. They're vulnerable during network synchronization. If we can hit them at the right moment, we can take out their entire command structure." The information spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Within minutes, every ship was targeting the enemy's command and control systems, striking at the exact moments when the swarm tried to re-establish communication between its scattered parts. The battle for Kepler 442 was turning into a victory for humanity. The Void Nexus was a place that should not exist. Dozens of black holes, each one massive enough to swallow entire star systems, spun through space in an impossible dance. The gravity fields they created bent space and time into shapes that hurt to look at. No sane pilot would ever fly a ship into such a deadly region, but the Devourer swarm was not sane. And they had made this nightmare their home. Admiral Lisa Kane stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Leviathan, watching as her fleet approached the edge of the Void Nexus. Every sensor on every ship was screaming warnings about the dangerous gravity fields ahead. Space itself was twisted into knots, creating passages that led nowhere and exits that opened into the hearts of dying stars. "Admiral," reported Commander Nick Taylor, his voice tight with concern, "long-range sensors are picking up massive enemy activity inside the Nexus. It looks like they've built their main manufacturing base in there." Kane studied the tactical display, her experienced eyes taking in the full scope of the challenge ahead. The Devourer swarm had retreated to the one place in the galaxy where no normal fleet could follow them. Here, protected by gravity fields that could crush planets, they were building millions of new machines every hour. "How many ships are we detecting?" she asked. "Unknown, ma'am. The gravity distortions are interfering with our sensors. But based on the energy readings, there could be tens of millions of them in there." Kane nodded grimly. After their defeat at Kepler 442, the remaining Devourer forces had gathered here for their final stand. They had learned from their losses and adapted their tactics. This would be the hardest battle humanity had ever fought. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships prepare for final assault. And get me a direct line to the Galactic Council." They wanted to observe this battle. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of alien species were watching through quantum communication links as the human fleet prepared to enter the Void Nexus. The crystalline beings hummed with nervous energy, while the gaseous aliens swirled in their containment suits. Even the ancient tree folk were rustling their leaves in anticipation. "Admiral Kane," came the voice of Elder Mordish over the communication channel. Are you certain about this course of action? The Void Nexus has destroyed every ship that has ever entered it. Even our most advanced vessels cannot survive those gravity fields. Kane smiled coldly. Elder, you're forgetting something important. We didn't build our ships to explore peaceful star systems. We built them to survive the most dangerous places we could imagine. And Earth's oceans are deeper and more crushing than anything in this nexus. The human fleet began to move forward, their ships designed to withstand pressures that would flatten mountains. Captains who had trained in the asteroid fields of Sol navigated through gravity wells that bent light itself. Pilots who had learned to fly in the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres found paths through space-time distortions that should have been impossible. Captain Ryan Davis brought the massive battleship UES Vengeance through a passage between two black holes, his ship's hull groaning under the incredible forces. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with the calm efficiency of people who had trained for exactly this situation. Hull integrity at 80%, reported his engineering officer. But we're holding together. The adaptive armor is compensating for the gravity stress. Good, Davis replied. Keep us on course. We didn't come this far to turn back now. The first enemy contact came from machines that had been hiding in the shadow of a black hole. Devourer fighters, each one the size of a building, emerged from the darkness and attacked the advancing human fleet. But these were different from the machines they had fought before. These had been upgraded with new weapons and armor, learning from their previous defeats. Lieutenant Commander Grace Murphy led her fighter squadron into the swarm of enemy machines, her small craft dancing between gravity fields that could have torn apart a normal ship. She had been chosen for this mission because of her experience flying in the most dangerous regions of human space. All fighters, this is Murphy, she called over the communication channel. Remember your training. These gravity fields are just another obstacle. We've flown through worse. The dogfight that followed took place in multiple dimensions as human fighters chased enemy machines through folded spacetime. Ships would disappear into gravity wells only to emerge on the other side of the battlefield. Pilots had to calculate not just where their targets were, but when they would be there. Dr. Amy Foster watched the battle from her research station aboard the UES Discovery, her instruments tracking the quantum signatures of the enemy machines. She had been working on a new weapon, something that could disrupt the very fabric of spacetime that the Devourer swarm used to coordinate their attacks. Admiral, she reported over the secure channel, I'm detecting the enemy's main control center. It's inside the largest manufacturing facility, right in the heart of the Nexus, but there's something else. They're using the black holes themselves as part of their network. Kane felt a chill run down her spine. If the enemy was using black holes as communication nodes, then destroying their network would be almost impossible. But almost impossible had never stopped humanity before. What do you need? Kane asked. I need strike teams to hit the core processors simultaneously. All of them at exactly the same moment. If even one survives, the entire network will rebuild itself within minutes. The assault on the manufacturing facilities pushed human technology to its absolute limits. Ships that had been designed to explore the deepest parts of Earth's oceans dove into gravity fields that warped reality itself. Soldiers in advanced armor fought their way through corridors where up and down changed meaning with every step. Sergeant Mike Thompson led one of the strike teams through the interior of a massive enemy facility. The walls around them pulsed with alien energy, and the floor beneath their feet was made of materials that had once been entire planets. This is Thompson to all teams, he reported. We're in position at Processor 7. Quantum Scrambler is armed and ready. Similar reports came in from strike teams throughout the facility. Human soldiers, trained on a world where survival meant adapting to any situation, had infiltrated the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The moment of truth came when all teams reported ready. Dr. Foster's fingers hovered over the activation switch that would trigger every quantum scrambler simultaneously. If her calculations were wrong, the strike teams would be trapped inside the enemy facility with no way out. All teams, this is Foster, she announced. Activating scramblers in 3, 2, 1, mark. The effect was immediate and devastating. Throughout the Void Nexus, the Devourer Swarm's network began to collapse. Machines that had been working in perfect coordination suddenly found themselves cut off from their collective consciousness. The hive mind that had terrorized the galaxy for months simply stopped working. All units, this is Admiral Kane, her voice carried across the fleet. Enemy network is down. All ships, advance and destroy remaining targets. Let's finish this. The final battle was swift and decisive. Without their network to guide them, the remaining Devourer machines were easy targets for the human fleet. Ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were reduced to scrap metal by weapons that the humans had been perfecting for years. As the last enemy machine was destroyed, a cheer went up from every human ship in the fleet. They had done the impossible. They had defeated an enemy that had consumed entire civilizations. "Admiral," reported Commander Taylor, his voice filled with amazement, "all enemy contacts have been eliminated. The Devourer swarm is completely destroyed." Kane looked out at the twisted space around them, where the wreckage of the enemy fleet was already being pulled into the black holes. "Signal the fleet. Mission accomplished. It's time to go home." The galaxy was safe and humanity had proven once again that there was no challenge too great for a species that refused to give up. The Galactic Council building had never seen so much activity. Ships from every corner of the galaxy filled the space around the Crystal Dome, their crews eager to witness the historic vote that would change everything. Representatives from hundreds of species crowded into the Great Hall, all of them knowing they were about to make the most important decision in galactic history. Ambassador Carl Johnson stood at the center of the hall, representing humanity before the assembled delegates. The tall gray-haired man had served as a diplomat for 20 years, but he had never faced a responsibility like this. Around him, the alien representatives waited to hear what humanity would say about their future role in the galaxy. "Honored delegates," Johnson began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. 3 months ago you came to us asking for help. You told us about an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations, an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. You had doubts about asking a young species like humanity to fight your battles. A murmur ran through the crowd. Everyone remembered the debate that had taken place in this very hall, when some delegates had argued that humans were too new, too primitive, too dangerous to be trusted with such a responsibility. Today, the Devourer swarm is nothing but scrap. Metal floating in the Void Nexus, Johnson continued. Your worlds are safe, your people are free, and your civilizations can continue to grow and prosper. But that victory came at a cost. We lost good ships and good people in that fight. The question now is what happens next. Elder Mordish of the Crystalline Collective stepped forward, his gem-like body glowing with emotion. Ambassador Johnson, on behalf of all the species represented here, I want to thank humanity for what you have done. Without your intervention, we would all be extinct. The debt we owe you cannot be measured. We don't want your debt, Johnson replied firmly. We didn't fight the Devourer swarm for payment or gratitude. We fought them because it was the right thing to do. But we have learned something important from this war. The galaxy is full of dangers, and they won't all be as easy to spot as the swarm. The delegates exchanged glances. They all knew Johnson was right. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of threats that could emerge at any time. Pirates, hostile AI, rogue military, forces, and things they hadn't even imagined yet. "What are you proposing?" asked Captain Veltar of the warrior clans. "The establishment of the Galactic Defense Initiative," Johnson announced. "A joint military force with representatives from every species, but commanded by human officers and based on human military doctrine. We will station fleets throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to any threat that emerges." The hall erupted in discussion. Some delegates were excited by the proposal, while others seemed worried about giving humans so much power. Ambassador Zekthara of the Veltani people, whose plea for help had started this whole chain of events, stepped forward. "I support this proposal completely," he said. The humans have proven they can be trusted with great power. They came to our aid when we needed them most, and they ask for nothing in return except the chance to protect others. One by one, the other delegates voiced their support. The Trading Federation saw the economic benefits of safer trade routes. The peaceful worlds appreciated having someone else handle the dangerous work of defense. Even the proud warrior clans admitted that human tactics were superior to their own. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Defense Initiative would be established, with its headquarters on Earth and Admiral Lisa Kane as its first Supreme Commander. Admiral Kane stood in the newly constructed command center on the Moon, watching as reports came in from across the galaxy. The GDI had been operational for 6 months now, and the results were impressive. Pirate attacks had dropped by 90%, trade between species had increased dramatically, and several potential conflicts had been resolved before they could turn into wars. "Admiral," reported Colonel Tim Bradley, "we're getting a distress call from the Outer Rim. A group of refugee ships is under attack by unknown hostiles." Kane smiled. This was exactly the kind of situation the GDI had been created to handle. "Dispatch the Third Fleet. Tell Captain Davis. His ships are authorized to use whatever force is necessary to protect those refugees." Throughout the galaxy, human ships patrolled the space lanes and protected the frontier colonies. The fleet had grown to over 5,000 vessels, with crews from dozens of different species. But the command structure remained human, because everyone had learned that humans had a unique talent for military strategy and tactics. Dr. Amy Foster had been promoted to head of the GDI's research division, with laboratories on a dozen different worlds. Her team continued to develop new weapons and defensive systems, always preparing for the next threat that might emerge from the unknown regions of space. "We can't become complacent," she warned during a meeting with the other department heads. The Devourer swarm was just one threat among many. There are things out there in the dark that we haven't even imagined yet. Her words proved prophetic when reports began coming in from deep space exploration teams. Strange signals from the galactic core, mysterious disappearances in the outer spiral arms, and sightings of ships that didn't match any known design. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, commanded the rapid response forces that investigated these reports. His ships were equipped with the latest technology and crewed by the best officers from across the galaxy. "The universe is a big place," he told his staff during a briefing. "We've made it safer, but we haven't made it completely safe. There will always be new challenges, new threats, new problems to solve." On Earth, President Helen Carter signed the final documents that made the planet the official capital of galactic defense. The old United Nations building had been expanded to house representatives from every species, while the Pentagon had been rebuilt as the central command center for military operations across the galaxy. "This is not the end of our story," she said during her address to the world. "This is just the beginning. We have taken our first steps toward becoming the guardians of the galaxy, but there is still so much work to do." The changes weren't just political. Human culture had begun to spread throughout the galaxy, carried by the GDI fleets and the diplomatic missions that followed in their wake. Alien species were learning human languages, studying human history, and trying to understand what made these Deathworlders so effective at solving problems. Commander Steve Rogers, now in charge of training programs for mixed-species crews, watched as human and alien officers worked together on the bridge of a new patrol ship. The cooperation wasn't always perfect, but it was getting better every day. "The key," he explained to a group of new recruits, "is understanding that we're all fighting for the same thing. We want to protect innocent people and keep the galaxy safe. It doesn't matter what species you are or what planet you come from. What matters is that you're willing to do your job when things get dangerous." As the months passed, the galaxy began to change in ways that went beyond just military protection. Trade flourished under the security provided by the GDI fleets. Scientific research accelerated as species shared knowledge and resources. Cultural exchange programs brought different civilizations together in ways that had never been possible. Before the Galactic Council, once a debating society that struggled to make decisions, had become an effective governing body capable of quick action when needed. The representatives still argued and disagreed, but they knew that if a real crisis emerged, the humans would be there to handle it. Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station above Earth, watching as human and alien ships worked together in perfect coordination. 5 years ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. Now they were the protectors of an entire galaxy. "Ma'am," her aide Commander Alex Turner approached with the daily reports. "All sectors are reporting normal activity. The trade convoys are moving safely, and the frontier colonies are expanding ahead of schedule?" Kane nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the stars beyond. "Keep the fleets on standby, Commander. In this galaxy, peace is something you have to fight for every single day." The story of humanity's rise had begun with a desperate plea for help. It had become something greater, proof that sometimes the smallest species could make the biggest difference, and that courage and determination were more powerful than any weapon.